video. Now, if you're not aware, this is kind of like the follow-up video of the last video, or like, no, not the last, but like one of the recent videos I uploaded, in which I read the Gilded Wolves, the first part in a YA fantasy heist series, and this video is going to be about the second part, and maybe if I get around to it, also the third part. So it would probably be best if you watched the video in which I talk about this one first, but if you're already aware of what happens in the first part, you can stay right here. Anyway, so I have started to read the Silvered Serpents. I am now already like halfway through, and here are my thoughts as of right now. First of all, let's talk about the formatting of this book. Why is it so damn big? Especially if you compare it to the first book. Why would you do this? Why would you make the second book twice as big as the first book? Doesn't make any sense to me. So obviously this has nothing to do with like the book itself, with its contents, but I just noticed that this is kind of like ridiculously big, and it is somewhat upsetting how the first and the second part are not the same size. But anyway, let's move on into contents. Now, if you watched this other video, you know that after the first part, I was not 100% sure if I wanted to continue, mainly on the basis of two facts. I was worried that like our main boy and our main girl in this group of teenage misfits who do like all these heists. We have our mastermind, and she's like this kind of like seductress kind of character. And obviously they like love each other. They have their thing going on, but they're not openly communicating. And at the end of the first book, they kind of start fighting, or like he starts to like push her away, be like really cold and distant towards her. And so everything is not well between them. And I was worried that this was going to be like a major plot line in the second part. And it is, but I have to say it is done in a way that is not unbearable. So them fighting, being cold and annoyed with one another, even though they actually love each other. It is a big part of like the second book, but somehow it is done in a way that is okay to read, even though it's still like unnecessary in my personal opinion. If those two could just openly communicate with one another, this would not even be a problem at all. Now in the second part, we of course also have like another heist going on. They're like treasure hunting another like historical artifact that they're after, but this one takes place in Russia, in St. Petersburg, and in like Siberia, in like the countryside. So I think setting wise, I prefer this from the first novel, because the first novel took place in Paris, and I mean that's fine, but I have been to Paris several times, so Paris is not as exciting maybe of a setting as St. Petersburg and Russia is, because I have never been to Russia and I really want to go, so it's kind of cool to have it take place there. Now, talking further about the plot, I feel like the second part is a bit more jumpy though, or less well explained in parts. What I mean by that is like we start off in St. Petersburg, and then they go through like this portal kind of thing, and then they're in Moscow. So far so good. But then suddenly they get like attacked by like some burning carriage, and that part I kind of like didn't get at all. Like they were suddenly in Moscow, and then suddenly they were like being attacked. I was like, wait, what is going on? Why can't you just like go out of the way? And only like at the end of the scene I like realized, or like I finally got that they were like trapped in like an alleyway, and so they couldn't escape this burning carriage that was coming towards them. But then they ended up being saved by someone, but they don't know by whom, and now they're suddenly kind of like collaborating with the woman that was like their worst enemy in the first part. Like that's logical enough, it's like explained in the book, but still that's also like, okay, suddenly forces are being joined with people we kind of like learned to hate in the first novel, and then they're suddenly in like Siberia. No, before that they suddenly stayed in like this tea shop, and that part I didn't get at all. Why were they suddenly in this tea shop? And they like slept there. I was like, okay, like who's the owner of this tea shop? What is this tea shop? Why are they sleeping there? Because I didn't even see how it was connected to the story. Why couldn't the author have just let them stay in like a hotel or something? But no, suddenly they were like in this tea shop, and I didn't really understand what they were doing there at all. So I feel like some parts of this novel, maybe they happened too quickly and were not explained well enough for like the reader to follow. I mean, granted, I did read this mainly in like crowded subways and like loud coffee shops, but those are the exact same situations I also read the first part in. And with the first part, I did never have like kind of like problems following what was happening and why it was happening. But like already like at a few points in the story, I was like, wait, what? Why are they suddenly there? Who's that person anyway? there were some instances where I felt like not enough information was given to the reader to fully understand what was even happening in the situation. Now let's talk about the main dude, the mastermind Severin, right? Because I have a theory and I have proof for my theory that our homeboy, well, he might not be as much of a genius as we were made to believe in the first part. So I already told you how at the end of the first part, he starts to push this woman that he actually loves away from him, starts to be really cold. And then like not only to her, but also to all his other friends who are like his family basically, because of a certain thing that happened in the first book. Now, I'm not gonna like really spoil it, but someone dies at the end of the first book who's really close to our mastermind Severin, and he is so scarred and traumatized by that incident that, as I just said, he starts to push everyone else that he loves away from him in like this weird logic that by, well, distancing himself from them, he is protecting them and like keeping them safe, etc. And now in like the second part, they're hunting this artifact, right? And it's not like only historically valuable and all of that, but apparently this thing, it also can grant the power of turning people into gods. And that's personally why our mastermind Severin is after it, because he now has this genius plan to turn all his friends into gods so they can never be harmed or killed. And he would never ever have to experience losing someone he loves. What? Plus, he also plans to turn himself into a god so that even if his friends should ever like leave him, like go out into the world to do their own thing, it wouldn't even matter because he would be a god and he would not have any feelings anymore. So he could again not be hurt by them leaving him. Dude, objectively the worst plan I've ever heard. Like, what the fuck? Homeboy is in no way, shape, or form dealing with his trauma, his grief, his guilt that he experienced after this other person in the first part died. But he now came up with this like lunatic plan to kind of like avoid ever having to feel something again, kind of. And that's just like, okay, you need help, like serious help, really fast. That is his mastermind plan right now. But did he tell the other ones about it? No. They're like all hunting down this artifact with him because they think they're just kind of like looking for it in general. And I'm looking forward to that scene in the book when they find it and he's going to be like, plot twist, I'm now going to turn all of y'all into gods so I don't ever have to deal with being hurt again. And they're going to be like, dude, what the fuck? I'm really looking forward to that scene because someone has to tell him that he's crazy. Anyway, so that's proof number one, that our genius is not that much of a genius at all. Especially like emotional intelligence in this character is non-existent. Plus, okay, this is kind of like a spoiler now if you haven't read the first book yet, but the person who dies in the first book is his kind of like brother. They're not blood related, but they grew up together and they went from foster family to foster family together. So they grew up like brothers, even though they're not blood related. And in the first book, in like very short, kind of like abstract, almost at the beginning of some chapters, we learned about those foster families and especially the fathers in those foster families that they had. And we learned that, I don't want to say all of them, but like most of these fathers that they stayed with, they died. Some, it seems like due to natural circumstances, but some definitely had been helped to like a faster end. And in the first part, it was never like talked about, but it was definitely insinuated there was our mastermind Severin who kind of like killed these fathers because they were treating him and his brother cruelly, or they were like bad people in general, or like whatever. But now basically in the second part, we learned that Tristan, that's the name of the brother that died in the first book, he was actually like this sweet, innocent little brother that Severin took care of and everything. But now we learn that he had quite a different side to him as well. Quite a, I don't know, twisted and also like cruel side. He apparently was killing all of these animals and stuff. And we only learn about that kind of at like the very, very end in this book. And now it's like a topic in the second book. But the thing is, Severin also only learns about it in the second book. So he was not aware of this side of his brother. And so, of course, that's one more thing that he's like being hard on himself on, in the sense that he's like, oh my god, I didn't even know my brother, I didn't protect him from himself and all of that. But here's the thing. It is therefore, of course, insinuated that their foster fathers, they were not, after all, killed by Severin, but by his kind of like homicidal, sweet-looking, but actually kind of psychopathic brother Tristan. But because Severin only finds out about this dark and twisted side of Tristan in the second book, that of course means that he was not aware of it this entire time. So what was he thinking? Like, yes, all 7 foster fathers we ever had, well, yeah, sure, they ended up dying, but I suppose that's just what happens. And he never kind of made that connection that that might not be a coincidence. And now it's coming like as this big shock that his brother had like a cruel and homicidal side to himself. Again, homeboy cannot be that smart after all if he never made that connection. Oh, all of our foster fathers are dying in very curious circumstances. That was just like another thing. Like, he must have turned a hell of a blind eye on all of that for like the 19 years that he has been living, for this to now be such a big shock that his brother probably had like, well, quite a dark side to him as well. Anyway, so those are basically my thoughts and feelings and my opinions about this book so far. As I just said, I'm mainly looking forward to that one scene where all of the friends are gonna be like, dude, you're crazy, once he like reveals his mastermind plan to them to now turn them into gods and stuff. I yesterday already ordered the 3rd part. I had planned to also like talk about it in this video, but now I see how long I've already talked, and I've shot some like coffee shop scenes in which I was reading this book, and I actually want to include them in this video. So I guess I will not be talking about the Bronze Beast, which is like the 3rd and final part in this series after all, and that will be a separate video. But like, anyway, we'll see. I will now look into all of those coffee shop clips, and I'll see you later once I finish or like further continue this book. I have just read the second, finished this book. I really like the second half. Like, a lot happened, but at least we stayed in the exact same location, so no more confusion on that part. But yeah, a lot happened. It definitely ends on like a cliffhanger kind of thing, so you can't stop with the second book. Like, I felt like you could potentially stop reading after the first book if you're not like interested, kind of, but if you've made it so far, you're definitely gonna pick up the third book as well. But as I told you, I already ordered that, and I'm gonna start like reading it this following week. But yeah, so far so good. I don't really have much I like want to discuss like in detail in person with you now, so I think I'm gonna end the video here. I will probably, if I have like enough to talk about, make a separate video for like the third part, Bronze Beast. If I don't have that much to say about it, I'm just going to talk about it in my monthly reading wrap up. But yeah, thank thank you for being on this journey with me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts and comments on the Silvered Serpents if you have read it, and I'm gonna see you in the next video. Bye guys.